Welcome to the fastest stop in town, Tanum Succah, Daf Gimel. We're going to begin on Gimel Amud Aleph, about 10 lines from the top. Omrav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak. He says that the halacha is, even though we've been learning about different dimensions of the length, width of a sukkah, 4 by 4 amos, 7 by 7, 6 by 6 tfachim. The sukkah must be big enough that you can put your head, the majority of your body, as well as your table. So Amrulay Rabbi Abba, come on, Kibbe Shammai. You're telling me that this is like the Shita of Shammai? Amrulay El Kaman. Yes. Well, otherwise, like, who else would it be like? Of course it's like Beis Shammai. Who is this like? Don't turn from it. Because normally you would think we don't paskin like him, so therefore maybe we shouldn't follow him. Says Taisus, Beseder of Amram Pasuk, Shishim and Kaimais, Halach Beis Shammai. There's actually 6 places Taisus brings down that we paskin Beis Shammai. Chadahai, one is here, to Sukkah Sricha Shtei Machzekas Rosh Hashanah. So this is one of the 6 places. We obviously have a very lengthy Taisus. If you skip a few lines, the Idach Masechtas Brachos Perik El Devarim, in the 8th parak of Masechtas Brachos, V'Shami Omrim Mechavdin Es Abayis V'Echach Noitum Li'Adayim. First you sweep the house, and then afterwards you wash your hands. V'Amin B'Gemara B'Kuli Pirkin Halach Beis Hillel Bar Minach. Over there, we always hold like Beis Hillel, excluding that halacha. Od Hasam is so Pirka Gabi Misha Ochal V'Shasa. When he was eating and drinking Bolberach, he didn't make a bracha. The Ma'asim Gemara Uvda the Rabbi B'Barachana Diashkach Yoyne the Hava. So the question is, do you have to go back to bench where you ate, or can you just bench where you remembered? So there's a story that this guy went back, and he ended up finding this golden dove. The Chad Talmud the Ava Kibbe Shammai V'Yashkach Arniki. He found money. The Idach Talmud the Ava Kibbe Hillel Achal Aryeh. And there was another person in possibly Beis Hillel that he was very makel, and he ended up getting damaged by a lion. I and the rest of Taisus. Maskiv Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. How do we know that their whole machlokus is regarding the minimal dimensions of a sukkah? Maybe they're talking about a big sukkah, where it's many feet long, many feet wide. So what is the argument? We're talking about that the person is sitting right at the edge of the sukkah, and the table is in his house. As you can see in this particular picture in the parish chai, that this person is in the sukkah, and his table is in his house. So Rosha Barubo is in the sukkah, and the shulchan is not in the sukkah, rather it's outside of the sukkah. Beis Shammai is concerned you may be drawn after your table, you end up eating outside of the sukkah. And I'll prove it to you based on the language. The Tani, as we find, it says, Mishahoya, if you happen to do it this way. Rosh of Ruba, the Sukkah, if it's talking about minimal dimensions, it should say the word machzekas, that this is the size. Mishahoya is mashma, it doesn't have to be that way, but it turned out to be that way because that's how you decide to sit. So the question is, how do we know they're arguing about a sukkah katana? Maybe they're arguing about a sukkah gadayla. So where it says, 1 second, the sukkah katana loplingi, you tell me that they don't argue when it comes to the minimal dimensions? Bosanya. Machzekas rosh v'rishochanoi kshera. So one opinion says you have to have rosh v'rishochanoi. Rabbi Yomi, no, ashehi ba arba amos has to be 4 by 4 amos. The tiny idach. Yet in another brace it says that Rabbi Yomi kol sukkah shein ba arba amos psula, which of course is consistent. The chachamim oimrim, the question is, who are these chachamim that feel in machzekas el rosh v'ruba kshera? Vil Shulchan Aruch Katani. He says all you need is Rosh Harubo. You don't need to have the table. Doesn't mention anything about the table. So Kashan Hadad Ilchar, it's a steer between these two brises. No, it's not a steer. So we see that really they do argue by a Sukkah Katana. And not only that, but Omar Marzutra Masnisa Namideka. It can prove it. Meditani Beishami Poisam is a Machshirin. It says it's puzzle. It means the Sukkah is puzzle. Now, obviously, that's talking about a minimal dimension Sukkah. Now, the Im Isa, if it's talking about a big Sukkah, the issue isn't on the Sukkah, the issue is about you and how you're sitting. It should say, Beishami Amrim Lo Yatzim, Lo Amrim Yatzim Ebalai. Idol Kashmi Shahaya. But why does it say Mishahaya, which is Mashmat the Sukkah Kedayla? So, my answer is, it's talking about both. Batarti pligi. Really, they argue by both. Pligi b'sukkatana, the pligi b'sukkatana, Katana is missing words. This is how you're supposed to read it. Mishahai rosh b'sukkah, b'shulchan b'sukkah bias, which is referring to a big sukkah. You say it's yatsa because there's nothing wrong with the sukkah. There's an issue with how you're sitting, possibly. The shade of Akzek is elke the rosh of ruba, but it's only 6 by 6. Then we use the language of kosher and pasuk. So Matan Tanu Hadatanu. Who is the Tana of the following thing that the rabbis taught? Bo arba amos al arba amos. If you have a house in which it does not have the minimum dimensions of 4 by 4 amos, first of all, patim and a mezuzah. Such a house does not need mezuzah. It's not considered to be a dira. It's too small. Also, it's pater umid maka. The roof is supposed to have some type of fence around so no one can fall and get hurt. We know that a house can potentially get saras. However, if it's a house that's so small, it doesn't get saras. And when it comes to Bati Arichayma, to be able to purchase back within a year's time a house that's in a walled city, it's dark if it's a normal house. And as it's brought down in Sefer Devarim, that under certain circumstances, if you build a house, you haven't lived in it, so you don't have to go to war. But if it's such a small and significant house, you still have to go to war. So you don't contribute to an eruv if you have a house that is connected to a chatzer with other houses, so you're not part of the eruv. Also for a sheet of mavos, in which we make, in order to be able to carry the mavo, which we saw in yesterday's daf, the numerous chatzeros, so everyone combines and they put the food in one of the chatzeros to be able to carry in the mavoi. If he's in such a small house, he's not required to participate in this. The ein manichin bo eruv, for that matter also, you don't put an eruv, because again, eruvi chatzeros, in order to carry in the chatzer, one of the houses has to have some food in it. So you cannot put the food for the eruvi chatzeros in this person's house. As we continue to Gimel and Beis, the ein oisenoi so iber bein shtei iros. It's brought down in Masechtas Eruvin that if you have two cities, the question is you can't carry more than Tchum Shabbos. However, if you have continuous dwellings, so the Tchum doesn't begin until you actually leave that city. So the question is, if let's say you have two cities, and in between it is less than 70 2/3 amos, which is 70 2/3 amos on both sides, but the house in between is so small that it's less than Dal amos, that doesn't combine the two cities. And brothers and partners don't divide. We'll discuss what that means on a later daf. So all these different things has to be Dalad al Dalad. So Lema Rebbe Hibel Rabbana. This is like the sheet of the Rabbana, like sheet of Rebbe. Rebbe mentioned Dalad al Dalad. Therefore, it makes sense. It must be like him and not like the sheet of Beis Shammai Hill. Now, Fil Tema Rabbana. Ad kan lo kamer Rabbana Hasam El Inin Sukkah Tidir Sarahi. The only time they said Rosh Ruba Shulchano, such a small dwelling is because it's only for Shiva Yamim for a short amount of time, and the sukkah has to be a diras arai, a temporary dwelling. Avol gabi bayis, the diras kevahu, it's a permanent house as it should be. Afil rabbanim moeded east bay dalad amos al dalad amos dari be inchi. If it's 4x4, people live in it. The lo dari be inchi. But if it's not that big, then people will not live in it. Okay. Omer Mar. Patim in a mezuzah, in a makah, in a metam in a goyim, in a nechla babati arichayma, in a chayzun ala berachem melchama, my taima. Why, when it comes to all these different dinim, do the dinim not apply if it's less than dalad al dalid? To bias ksibuhu b'kuhu. It says the word bias, house, by every one of them, and this is not a house. It's too small. The ein ma'arvin bo, in mishtachmin bo, in manichin bo eruv. So as you said, they don't participate in an eruv chatzeros. Also, the eruv is not put into that little house, and they don't participate in shitufei mavos. My taima, delo chaziladira, because it's not fit for living. And since it's not fit for living, so then the din is that all these laws don't apply. So eruv chatzeros and menichin boy. It says the diak is okay. They are not allowed to put the eruv into this person's house. That's not allowed for eruv chatzeros, which is mashma avol shita manichin bo. When it comes to shitufei mavos, we allow it to be in this guy's domain. Now, normally when it comes to shitufei mavos, it's put into the chatzer of that connected house. So why do we allow it? Because this house is not worse than a chatzer, a courtyard which is completely opened up. So we say that it's not any worse than a chatzer. Of course, when it comes to shitufei mavos, you put it into the chatzer. But this house is no worse than a chatzer. Titnan. Eruv chatzeros b'chatzer. Shitufei mavoi b'mavoi b'avin. But we ask, that's not true. Eruv chatzeros b'chatzer. When it comes to eruv chatzeros, do we put the food in the chatzer? No. But we learn the Masechtas Eruvin hanois in eruv b'bai shar chsanu marfeses. There a person who puts an eruv for the eruv chatzeros in a gateway, a porch, or a second floor area, enu eruv. That's not an eruv. V'adarsham enu oiser. And the one who lives there cannot aser, which is referring to when it comes to eruvin, and this is particular importance as brought down Masechtas Eruvin, as we learned, that if you have someone Jewish or someone not Jewish, so everyone has to participate, and if someone doesn't, that could cause problems that no one is allowed to carry in that area if not everyone combined and connected. However, this person who lives there does not aser anything because it's not significant. So the question nonetheless is, how can you tell me that eruv chatzeros is put in the chatzer? It's not true. El ema eruv chatzeros b'bayis shebachatzer. It's put in the house in that chatzer. V'shitipui mavois b'chatzer shebamavoy. Bahai, in this little house, well, gar b'chatzer shebamavoy. So therefore, it's allowed to be done that way. Let's look at question 8. Elu dalad parshios b'Torah. This is a hard question. These are the 4 parshas in the Torah that it says the word bayis. Lafikach mamatinan kol she'ein bo dalad al dalad is not good. So one is mezuzah, makkah, nigoyim, hasa saras, bati richoyma, and chazara ma'archi ha-milchama. So he asks you 4 of the 5. Okay. Still a difficult question. Then so iber ben shtei yiros. As we said, if you have these 2 cities, normally the problem is if it's more than 141 and a third amos, so then all of a sudden you have to start counting Tchum Shabbos. But again, if you have a bunch of houses, you can just keep on going. The question is, this house count that it links these 2 houses? The answer is these 2 cities. The answer is doesn't. It tells us interestingly that filu kiborganin lumashavin lay. This is one of the first of the 2 times that word is going to be mentioned in this Masechta. A borganin is someone who has a little hut, who is in the field and he's watching peros and fruits. So lo mashavin lay my tama borganin chazal musayu v'hailu chazal musayu. When it comes to a house which is so small, it doesn't serve its purpose. It's not a dira. However, this hut does serve its purpose, and therefore the watcher's hut actually will be an Eruv, will connect the two cities. The Ein Ha'achad Meshutva and Cholkin Boy. So we said we're going to discuss this. We're going to discuss it here. That brothers and partners don't divide a house which is less than dal dal dal. What does that mean? Taima the way to be dal dal. As mashma the house cannot be less than dal dal. So less than dal dal, they don't divide it. Which is mashma. East be dal dal is Cholkin, but none. In Cholkin it's a chatzer ad shehi ba'arba amos l'zever amos l'zeh. So it really should be 4 by 8. So if you divide it in half, it ends up becoming 4 by 4. So it shouldn't be telling you 4 by 4 is enough. 4 by 4 will make each one will end up having a tiny little house, 2 by 4. That's not enough. So that can't be the shot of what this is referring to. El ema in badin chaluka kechatzer. It doesn't have the din of dividing things up like a courtyard. What does that mean? Gemara Abuna. Chatzer lafi pischeha mischalekes. We divide up the properties according to the doorways that are going into the courtyard. So if, let's say, one house has one doorway, the other one may be smaller, but they have 3 doorways, so then one person, if let's say one person gets one house, they only get these 3 tiny houses, but that person with these 3 houses which have doorways entering into the courtyard, they'll actually have 75% ownership of the courtyard, and the other one house, even if it's quite large, the din is he only gets a quarter of it. Rav Chisda Omer says no. Every single door gets its own 4 amos. However, after that, after that, everything is divided equally. Now, the Hanimili bias, that's only if we're talking about a house, since it's something that can be used, so it's going to get a portion of the courtyard. Hi, but this little house, which is less than dal dal dalid, mitzarkoi, it's like something which is to be destroyed. Basically, it's something that really does not have much significance. So we don't give him any amount at all when it comes to this. Okay, we're going to stop there. There's 2 dots. And let's see a whole bunch of questions. Starting off with TA 13. Good question. So we said they argue by a Sukkah Katana that whether it is 7 by 7 Rosh Hashanah or just Rosh Hashanah without the table, namely it is that's a Sukkah Katana. A Sukkah Daila is whether we hold Gazrin and Shema Yimshach Achar Shulchanai. So they actually argue by a Sukkah Katana and by a Sukkah Gedolah. Okay, that's TA. TB 14. V'may hilchas ha'amr b'gemara Yabayah she'in bo dal dalid lo garm a chatzar. We say that's no worse than a chatzar. So what is that referring to? V'may hilchas ha'amr digar af neborganim. Okay, so first of all, we said when it comes to shitufi mavos, where you put the food in the actual chutzner, so you can put it into this guy's house, and it's worse than a borgin in this hut, because in that case we do not do ibur, the connection between shtei yaros of two cities. Okay, fine. Let's see Rav Schlonger's test, and then we'll stop. These are 2-block tests. There's actually a lot of questions crammed in here. Question. Let's see. Me'ez lashon hamishna mechicha hagemara shemachlokas bein shamei sil b'sukkah gedola, because it says mishahaya. Umachlokas fine. Me'ez lashon hamishna mechicha hagemara machlokas bein shamei sil b'sukkah katana. That it says puzzle and kosher. Ma pirish ve'enu nechel b'bati arichayim. When Sarah wrote, if your house is in a walled city, you sell it. You only have 1 year to redeem it, but not so if your house you sold was less than dal. Okay. Adkan.